to understand blockchain, you need to at least recognize how transactions are processed today in normal financial institutions in a normal business. Currently, when we need to do something, what we end up doing is we use a trusted middleman, like a bank or a credit card company, to process a transaction, okay? Or it could be like a cloud provider in terms of somebody sitting in the middle. Okay. Either way, there's somebody sitting in the middle that's charging a fee for their services, either a percentage of the transaction, or it could be a set fee depending on what the nature of the transaction is doing. Okay. So in the case of a financial transaction, let's say it's a $100 transaction, the bank might take anywhere from $3 to $5, depending on the specific terms of that transaction, to process it. Now, for that fee, they take money out of one account, they move it to another account, and they provide various assurance services such as fraud prevention along the way. But there's a middleman. Okay. Now with blockchain, it's a little bit different. Instead of having a middleman, we work with a distributed ledger in a distributed environment where instead of working with a specific company, we work with a technology that actually does the facilitation and trust and assurance services for us. We can connect the seller and the buyer directly together, and they can conduct business directly. Instead of having a company in the middle, the blockchain is in the middle there. So it doesn't change the nature of the transactions. People are still buying and selling things, but it changes the nature of how that transaction is processed and who does that actual processing. Okay, so this idea that we can connect people directly together will allow us to be able to do more business at a lower cost of operation. Now, all blockchain will use some measure of cryptography, although it varies depending on what specific blockchain technology you're using. But they all work around the idea of encryption and cryptography. That is how we can keep things secure. That's how the blockchain is able to provide a decentralized database and ledger that everybody can work with and examine. And in public blockchains, and we'll talk more about public blockchains and private blockchains here in a minute, in a public blockchain, all aspects of that actual transaction, date, addresses, amounts, in terms of the information that was exchanged, is public. If you, for example, process a transaction on Bitcoin or Ethereum, anybody in the world can use what's called a chain explorer, and they can see the nature of that transaction, where the crypto originated, where it went, what block it was part of, and also the quantity of what was exchanged or what information was exchanged along with it. Now, an important thing with public blockchains and even private blockchains to a degree as well, it's this idea of consensus. Now, this is where a lot of people kind of get screwed up with respect to blockchain. They just think, well, how is it fraud resistant? How can you just work with this? Well, it's this idea of a consensus protocol that in order for a transaction to be added to the blockchain, it has to be correct. It has to meet certain cryptography standards. And in fact, when we add something to the blockchain, we have to have consensus amongst the users that this was an appropriate transaction, this person had the authority to commit this action, and that it is cryptography correct in terms of the information that is exchanged. Now, another major aspect of blockchain technology is permanence. When you commit something to the blockchain, it is written in stone. It essentially will exist in perpetuity from today forevermore. When something is added to the blockchain, it is permanent and can never be modified. You can't update it. You can't correct it. You could certainly write another transaction to update, but it would exist as one too. It would not be, hey, I went back and I adjusted a prior period entry. You can't do that with blockchain. Blockchain, by its very design, is permanent. And because the ledger itself is decentralized, it can't be modified. And you can always tell when somebody is fraudulently trying to commit something to the blockchain. Now, there are a couple of misconceptions that I want to address immediately so we can get our facts right around blockchain and cryptocurrency. Okay? All cryptocurrency is blockchain technology, but not all blockchain is cryptocurrency. Okay? Cryptocurrencies are going to be things like your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your Litecoin, your IOTA, and more. Cryptocurrency, one of the ways you can think about it, it's typically a store of value in the same way that if I have a $100 bill in my wallet, well, I have $100 of units that I can use to go buy milk, eggs, or whatever else I choose to use. Bitcoin's the same way. It's a store of value. So with that store of value, I can choose to spend that Bitcoin however I choose to, whether it be buying a pizza or sending money to a family member overseas without having to go through a company like Western Union or something else. However, blockchain's more than that. Blockchain is a ledger type transaction, and we will talk more about that here in a minute in terms of what the blocks and the blockchain represents. But think of it as being a ledger. It's a record-keeping system in the same way that accounting is a record-keeping system with double entries. You have debits, you have credits. Same thing with blockchain, but think of it as being accounting 2.0. I think at a very deep level, when this technology is fully embraced, it will be revolutionary to how we build accounting systems and will bring an unparalleled level of trust and authenticity and security to our accounting. But we're not there today. This technology is still very infant. So there are lots of implementations of blockchain. It's way more than just Bitcoin. And while it is the largest, there are lots of other types of blockchains that you should be familiar with. One that we're going to talk about today is one called Hyperledger Fabric, originally brought to market by IBM, which is a private blockchain where you can get all the features and functions and all the stuff I'm talking about without having to be in the cryptocurrency market. So it's a great way, for example, to track supply chain, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So don't think blockchain is just limited to the price of Bitcoin. It is a much bigger world out there. It's more than just trading cryptocurrency. There are a lot of really interesting world applications where trust is the priority. I need a way of doing international business. I need a way of transmitting information. I need a way of assurance where I don't know the other person. Blockchain can provide that in ways that traditional technologies just can't. Now, the other big misconception is, well, if I work with Bitcoin or Ethereum, all my information is just out there. Yes, that's a public blockchain. That is a feature. That is not a bug of what you get. People who interact with public blockchains want it for that very reason, that transparency and the ability that anybody can interact with that particular technology. However, again, it's not just public blockchains. There are private blockchains that you can utilize for institutional and business use. So you can get all the features you love. However, it is your technology, it's your deployment, and you get control over who can interact with and who has access to the ledger. So if you want to utilize blockchain technology without having to make all your information private, realize you totally can't.